this warrants him. He is a war criminal. But we have to gather the information. We have to continue to provide Ukraine with the weapons they need to continue the fight. And we have to gather all the detail so this can be have a war crime trial. This guy is brutal. And what's happening in Bucha is outrageous. And everyone's seen it.
So that's Joe Biden very clearly designating once again Vladimir Putin as a war criminal and implying that there should be a trial. But of course, there's a lot of ambiguity there about exactly how long this process would be, who would adjudicate it. Could there be anything like a real trial when it comes to a leader like Vladimir Putin? And joining us now to discuss, senior politics reporter at Insider, John Haltiwanger. It's been a long time since we spoke. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
Glad to have you here. We decided to start on something light. But anyway, I know that you have a lot of thoughts about both what Biden had to say, but then also the substance of it, the images and video coming out of Bucha, and as time has passed, we're learning about more similar, perhaps even more devastating massacres. So talk to me a little bit about your thoughts about what Biden said in that video.
Well, I think we have seen indisputable war crimes in Ukraine committed by Russia. We've seen Russia employ a playbook it's used in past conflicts in Chechnya and Syria, where it ruthlessly targets civilian areas, besieges cities, really makes the people suffer in an effort to try to get them to capitulate to its demands. In this case, Russia has a lot of broad demands for Ukraine, such as being permanently banned from NATO, not joining the EU. It effectively is trying to implant a pro-Russian government in Kyiv. So there's a whole list of demands Russia has, et cetera. This is also why a lot of people think that Russia is not really approaching the peace talks with Ukraine in good faith because it has so many absurd demands, on the page that Ukraine likely would never agree to. But yes, we've seen a lot of really harrowing images come out of Bucha, come out of Mariupol, come from all across Ukraine, where these are the types of things that are really horrifying, that are clearly war crimes. But the bigger issue here is whether or not we can actually hold Russia accountable for these crimes. Russia does not recognize the International Criminal Court. It doesn't recognize the authority of the ICC. Neither does the US for that matter. That's why it's kind of interesting that we're hearing Biden and all of these politicians say Russia really needs to be held accountable for war crimes. Well, it would help if major powers like the US recognize the authority and legitimacy of these international bodies like the ICC to adjudicate these issues. So, it's pretty obvious what Russia has done here is, qualifies as war crimes. There's a broader debate as to whether or not this was genocide. We're seeing some academics come out and say, this is clearly genocide. Russia has essentially said Ukraine doesn't have a right to exist. Putin has said Ukraine is not a real country. It only exists because of Russia, which is of course ahistorical, but it's still important that a world leader is saying this on record in front of the world. He's signaling what his intent is here, and that's to subjugate Ukraine by any means necessary. And that's unfortunately what we're seeing in places like Bucha, where with these images of civilians with their hands tied behind their backs, bodies littered in the streets. And this is why academics are saying the mixture of these horrific actions and the rhetoric that we're hearing from Moscow makes this genocide. It constitutes genocide because of the combination of these factors, and because it's not just limited to Bucha. It's all over Ukraine. We're seeing these ruthless tactics across the country in terms of Russia's military operations there.
So you touched on a lot, and I want to get to as much as we can. But a follow up in terms of a trial. I mean, you rightly point out that we don't really recognize the legitimacy of any court that would do this, and it's important too that Russia doesn't. So is this just posturing? Does it will it go anywhere?
I mean, it's a really big and important question. I think it kind of touches on some of what Zelensky was saying in his speech to the UN Security Council, that Russia has really challenged this international system that the major powers built after World War II to try to prevent wars like this, to try and prevent war crimes like we saw the Nazis commit during World War II. And the system has failed completely. Russia is one of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council. It has veto power as such. Zelensky is calling for Russia to be kicked off the UN Security Council. I'm not sure there's any actual mechanism for that to happen. So there's a lot of these kind of suggestions of what needs to be done to punish Russia for this, and not a whole lot of room for it to actually happen based on the way the international system is built. So in many ways, I think this conflict raises questions about that system, raises questions as to whether we need to reform it, kind of tear it down and rebuild it, because it's not really built to hold these major powers accountable. I mean, not to put the US invasion of Iraq on the exact same level as the things we're seeing Russia do in Ukraine, but this was an illegal invasion. The UN called it out. There was not international consensus. So we've just repeatedly seen major powers, flout these international norms and rules and get away with it, because the UN is not really built to hold these countries accountable. And the international kind of justice system is also limited in its means. I mean, basically, if the ICC did hold a trial, I doubt Putin would show up physically. And if it did convict him or any other Russian officials, they'd basically have to hope that they were stupid enough to travel to another country and be arrested in those countries. And the likelihood of that happening is very slim from my view.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.